Large streams from little fountains flow. Tall oaks from little acorns grow. And though I am now small and young, of judgment weak and feeble tongue, yet all great learned men, like me, once learned to read their ABC. As a boy, I lived in one of the smaller western communities. My name is Russell Morgan, Rusty for short. Looking back, I recall that I was high-spirited and full of mischief. I was always ready and eager to play pranks on the local citizens and popular with the younger fry whose prime purpose in life seemed to be adventure.
You in here riding my calves? Get out of here! This is private property! Confounded rascals!
I wish you could have seen the world through my eyes at that age. It was beautiful and exciting. Life seemed like a luscious apple, ready to be tasted with relish. The future was a distant, rosy nothingness, with which I had very little concern at the moment. The present was good, and all around me, and I was determined to enjoy it to the full. My home was typical of those in the neighborhood. We weren't wealthy by any means, nor was there ever a time when we went hungry. My 2 brothers, 3 sisters, and I got along as well as most families, with a little fight now and then. but in the main a closely knit, affectionate group.
Oh, boy.
My father was a busy mill owner and a devoted churchman. We didn't see too much of him. He and I lived in completely different worlds, and our paths didn't touch at many points. As I look back now, I marvel at the patience of those who guided me through the jungle maze of youthful experience. In addition to my family, there were 3 people who stand out clearly in retrospect. 2 men and a woman who affected my life so much
Hi, Rusty.
that I shall never be able to repay them.
Okay, Rusty, come on out of there. What do you think you're doing? Oh, you've got company, have you?
What'd you have to like?
All 3 of you in on this. Say, don't you know it's a federal offense to tamper with the mails?
How'd you even know it was us, George?
Don't worry. Whenever anything unusual happens, I know who's at the bottom of it.
Hey, George, you got any mail for me?
Say, you gotta learn to write before you can get letters, boy.
You ought to see my report card.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've been talking to your ma. Say, by the way, fellas, I've got a job for you.
A job? What kind of a job? Does it pay anything?
Well, in a way, yes.
What do you mean, in a way? Is this another one of those pay-you-in-heaven jobs?
Well, Rusty, you know Sister Tyler. She's not as strong as she used to be, and she has real need for some kindling wood. Now, what I'd like you fellas to do is to meet me over at her home when I'm through with my rounds. Say about 3:30. What do you say?
George, we got plans.
No, we're too busy.
we got plans.
Well, there could be some donuts and cider.
On second thought, maybe our plans could wait a little. We might be able to be there, George. 3:30?
Fine, fellas, thanks. I knew I could count on you. Well, I better get to work. They don't pay me, you know, for just gabbing around with you guys. See you at 3:30.
Hey, George, didn't you forget something?
Oh, you character. Goodbye.
Let's see ya.
Thanks, Rusty. That's
I won't need any more. You boys and Brother Wengren have certainly done your good deed for the day, and I want you to know that I'm grateful. Does that look good to you?
Oh, you're not kidding.
I know, boys are always hungry. Well, you go along and get the other fellows, and we'll have some refreshments.
All right.
You know, fellas, there's a reason why you feel so good about what you did this afternoon. And it's not just the cider and donuts either.
Sure help.
Yeah, they tasted good, didn't they? Have you ever stopped to realize that you love those people most that you do something for? Why do you think a mother loves her child so dearly? Certainly, the child hasn't had opportunity to do anything much for her yet, except give her a lot of pain and anxiety. And yet, there's no love like it in all the world. It's because she's done so much for her child. And in somewhat the same way, your joy and happiness is going to depend not so much on what you get out of life, but on what you give to it. Give to the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you. It's as simple as that. Now, you'll always remember what you did with Sister Tyler today. This
Well, it didn't
note you
make
carried
sense
her
to me at
will
first,
make you feel
but there was no denying the fact that at that moment I did feel kind of good inside. And this always happened when George involved us in something like this. I'll never forget the times when he would take us hiking and camping in the mountains. He used to tell us story after story about his boyhood days, and the lessons which he had learned as a youngster subconsciously became patterns for our own lives. Yes, Brother George Wengren was really someone to remember. To some, he may have been just a humble mail carrier, but to me, he was a giant of a man. In my early teens, I didn't attend Sunday school regularly. Some of us used to duck out after we'd taken care of our priesthood duties. Our interests were so varied that we didn't always see the necessity of attending Sunday school, even though we knew deep down that it was the right thing to do. Then, at the beginning of a new year, we were moved into another class and found something quite different to what we'd been used to. The teacher made the class so interesting that even though we had all sorts of other things on our minds, we couldn't help but pay attention. She got us doing things during class instead of just sitting and listening.
How long did Jesus fast? Carl?
40 days and 40 nights.
How did Satan try to tempt Jesus the first time? Terry?
Well, naturally, Jesus was very hungry, and so Satan asked him to turn stones into bread.
Terry, good going.
What was the third temptation? Jim?
Well, I believe Satan told Jesus to jump off a high building and save himself.
Nope, we caught you there. That was the second one.
Okay. You've heard the second temptation. What answer did Jesus give to that one? Janice?
Didn't he say you shouldn't tempt God?
How about that, Sister Lander?
That's close enough. What he actually said was, "It is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God."
Oh, that was fun, wasn't it?
Now, what possible relation could there be between the temptations of Jesus and our own lives? Yes, Rusty?
Well, I guess Jesus must have been awful hungry after fasting all those days. And he could have easily turned the stones into bread, but he withstood the temptation and he didn't. Now, when us kids are tempted to do something wrong, we should think of the wonderful example he set for us and not do it.
That's a very good answer, Rusty. You're exactly right.
This kind of involvement completely captured us. We found ourselves actually looking forward to our Sunday school class and studying during the week so we could turn up with the right answers. I began to learn a lot about the gospel, and to my great surprise, found it extremely interesting.
I have some sad news this morning, for me at least. My husband's been transferred to manage a new store way up in Idaho. This means we're going to have to move very soon. Oh, I'm going to miss all of you terribly. But there's nothing I can do about it. The company even has a house all picked out for us to live in. So I guess we'll just have to say our goodbyes after class is over today.
Golly, Sister Lander, who'll take your place?
I don't know, Sherry, but there are many capable people in the ward, and I'm sure they'll find someone to take my place, and that everything will be just fine.
And the fact that Jesus chose fishermen and other humble men for his 12 has caused some scholars to comment. Some have wondered why he didn't go into the synagogues and schools and choose from the scribes and learned men. It was to the priestly group that the people looked for spiritual guidance, and yet here was this man claiming to be a prophet, choosing ordinary men out of the street who had little or no learning in the academic sense of the word. It seemed as though he purposely went out of his way to ignore the Jewish...
this before.
Will you boys please stop whispering? You're disturbing the class.
Well, we only want to ask a question about the lesson.
Well, what is it?
Well, I was just wondering, what has this all got to do with us? I mean, where do all these things that happened years and years ago fit in with what we do today?
Well, it's my job to try to teach you the scriptures. You've got to know how those people lived in those days and what they had to go through in order to be Christians.
Yes, but Sister Lander used to let us act out scenes which compared those days
I can't help what Sister Lander used to do. I'm teaching the class now, and we'll do it my way, if you please. Furthermore, if you boys can't keep still and listen and try and learn something, you'll have to leave. I simply can't have you disturbing the class this way. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. The Savior met Andrew, the brother of Peter, first. And after Andrew had met Jesus, he went looking for Peter. And the two of them found some other fishermen, and they went off to the Sea of Galilee.
Well, it looked like our new teacher was in solid, and I now felt that she had it in for me. Gone were the guessing games, the pantomimes, the friendly competition, and scorekeeping. The class would never be the same. It wasn't fun anymore, and I found myself rapidly losing interest in it. Perhaps if my father hadn't died around that time, I might have continued to attend Sunday school under parental pressure. Mother tried to keep me coming, but with many other conflicting influences working on me, the dull Sunday school lessons didn't stand a chance. Oh, and it wasn't only Sunday school. I found myself ducking priesthood and sacrament meetings also, as the gang I was going around with found more interesting things to do. My mother was more deeply concerned than I realized at the time.
Well, it isn't that Rusty's a difficult boy, but it's just that since Fred died, there hasn't been the steadying hand that was there before. Well, there never was too much in common between Rusty and his father, but as long as Fred was alive, Rusty felt a certain obligation toward the church. At least he went to most of the meetings. But with Russell's being the eldest boy and all, I'm afraid the example to his sisters and younger brothers isn't all it should be. What can I do, Bishop?
It's not uncommon for a boy to flap his wings a little as he approaches his adult responsibilities. This is especially true in Rusty's case, where he's being thrust into a position of responsibility much earlier than would have been the case had his father lived. Don't you worry, Sister Morgan. I'll have a talk with him and make an effort to get a little closer to him than I have up to now.
Oh, thank you, Bishop. Rusty respects you and will follow whatever counsel you give him, I'm sure.
He's a fine boy, Sister
Thank
Morgan.
you.
Dawn, how was your Sunday school today?
Oh, just fine.
Would you like some milk, son?
Thanks, Mom.
Hi, this is a lovely dinner, Mother.
Thank you.
Say, Ed, what do you know about the Morgan boy?
What do you mean, Rusty?
That's right. Hasn't been around much lately.
Well, he's been around all right. Not around church, if that's what you mean.
What can you tell me about him?
Rusty's okay, but he's running around with quite a rowdy bunch. They do most of their chasing on weekends.
I want you to invite him to dinner next Sunday.
Rusty Morgan? To dinner? Here?
You didn't think I'd invite him to the Waldorf Astoria, did you?
I think that's a wonderful idea to invite him to dinner.
Sure, I'll ask him, but I don't know if he'll come. What's the deal, anyway?
You've known Rusty for a long time, and you're about his age. I think you'd stand a better chance of getting him to come than I would. That boy needs a little help, and I think we're just the family to give it to him.
I didn't realize why at the time, but the bishop began to include me in his plans along with his own boys. I can still remember a father's and son's outing. We camped overnight and had a wonderful time hiking and fishing. He took me to sporting events and shows, just like I was one of his own sons. He used to cut his own boys' hair, and since I didn't have much money in those days, he regularly included me and several other neighborhood boys who otherwise would have gone long-haired. About this time, we moved to an adjoining town where my mother had obtained work. Bishop Madsen came to see us off.
We're real sorry to lose you, Rusty. We've grown to look upon you as one of our own.
Well, Bishop, I'm gonna miss you and your family, too.
I want you to take care of your mother and your sisters, and particularly your younger brothers. They look up to you and will do pretty much as they see you doing. You're the head of the household now, Rusty, and your influence is pretty well established. Let's keep it that way, shall we?
Bishop, thanks for everything.
Goodbye, Rusty.
Oh, I almost forgot. Russell Morgan called a couple of hours ago. He'd like you to speak at Hollydale 4th Ward 2 weeks from tonight.
Russell Morgan. Why, that must be Rusty. You remember, Mother? The boy who used to pal around with Ed and Dawn? Why, it must be 10, 12 years since he left here.
Of course. Rusty Morgan. I remember. Such a nice family.
Rusty Morgan. Imagine that. What time did he say the meeting was?
6:30. Oh, but he'd like to come about 5 and drive us over.
I don't think I have a high council assignment that night. I think we can make it. It'll be a real pleasure to see that boy again. Rusty.
Hello, Bishop.
Rusty Morgan.
How are you, Bishop?
My, but it's good to see you.
Thank you.
And this is your little family.
Yes, this is my wife, Helen.
How do you do?
And this is Bonnie. And this is Kent. This is Bishop Madsen.
Oh, well, please come in, won't you?
Thank you.
Mother will be mighty glad to see you.
Oh, I'll be glad to see her, too.
This is really marvelous. Mother, you about ready? And it's been 15 years.
15?
15 years.
That's right,
What
Bishop.
A long time.
I'll say.
Rusty, how good to see you
Sister
again. I can
Madsen.
scarcely believe how you've grown.
Sister Madsen, this is my wife, Helen.
How are you,
so
Helen?
much about
I'm
you.
happy to
And
meet you.
this is Kent, and this is Bonnie. Can
How
you say hello
doing,
to Sister
Bobby?
Madsen?
Bonnie, can you say hello?
My, what a lovely building. It's brand new, isn't it?
Yes, it's so new we haven't even got the landscaping in yet.
Hello there, Bishop.
Oh, good evening, Brother Rasmussen.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. This is Bishop Madsen. This is
I'm
Brother Rasmussen.
Certainly happy to meet you, Bishop Madsen.
The Bishop is going to be our speaker this evening.
Fine. See you in church.
Thank you.
Rusty, are you the bishop here?
Well, people seem to think so, yes.
And you never told me, you rascal.
Well, to tell you the truth, it never occurred to me. You know, tonight is the second anniversary of your accepting me as your bishop. And I'd like to give thanks to my Heavenly Father and to you wonderful people for the blessings that have come to me and my family during the past 2 years. Your loyal support in everything that we've tried to do, including the completion of this chapel, has been an inspiration and a real source of testimony to me. Although I've been your bishop for quite some time now, it occurred to me that most of you know very little about my earlier life. Actually, I was quite a cut-up as a boy. I grew up in a little farming community about 60 miles south of here, and I managed to make most of the mistakes that youngsters can make. But the Lord must have been watching very closely over me, because I had the good fortune to be strongly influenced by some good and wise people who came along when I needed them most. In addition to my own family, there were several other people who, in ways completely unsuspected by me at the time, infused in me a basic love of the gospel and the right way of life. And I thought it particularly fitting tonight that we honor them by hearing from one of these wonderful people to whom I owe so much. Brother Madsen, our speaker for tonight, is a high counselor in the Crestland stake. But to me, he'll always be Bishop Madsen, the man who took the time to put his arm around the shoulder of a wayward boy and extend his love to the point of involving him in the things of God. Bishop Madsen.
My brothers and sisters, if we were to analyze the progress of the meeting thus far, we would find that the sermon has already been delivered. Because there's nothing so powerful as the bearing of testimony and the giving of thanks to God for his many blessings to us. Your bishop and our friend, the boy of long ago, has led our thoughts in this direction. Those of us who somewhere along life's way may have been an instrument in God's hand to bring certain good things to pass can only bow our heads in thankfulness and gratitude that we were entrusted with such opportunities. All of our lives have been touched by humble men and women, teachers, quorum advisors, and just neighborly members of the church whose names are written on our memories and in our hearts. One final thought I would like to leave with you in closing. Great as has been my joy this night, it is nevertheless tinged with a note of sadness, a note of personal regret. For as I look back over my activities as a bishop, and not only as a bishop, but as just a member of this great church, I can recall many opportunities to influence the lives of others for good, which I neglected to take advantage of. Oh, my brothers and sisters, if there is any worth in the utterances of this night, is it not in the reminder that we are our brother's keeper? Are we not members of a divine team with the inescapable obligation to care for one another? Obedience to the commandment, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, as well as the Savior's admonition, this is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you, applies to each and every one of us, regardless of who we are. That we may take it upon ourselves to seek out those who are wandering and bring them back into activity, thereby serving them and the Lord with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. This is my prayer.